Welcome in class and welcome online. We are in day 7 of the O-Grain Organic Grain Production and Marketing Seminar. Today we have Daryl Hinderman, another great employee of Crop or Organic Valley, different names for the same thing. So today we're going to be talking about weed control in organic systems. So Daryl Hinderman is who is with us today. He is primarily, first off, a farmer. He has over 200 acres near Dickeyville, Wisconsin, that he recently transitioned to his son. He's also a brick and mortar business owner. He has a feed mill and fertilizer company also in the same area, Meadow Creek Enterprise. And Daryl also retired a few years ago to work twice as hard as Organic Valley or Crops, Organic Farming, Transitioning, and Support Coordinator. So he basically sits at kitchen tables around the Midwest helping farmers navigate the first years of organic production. So today we'll be wandering into the weeds with Daryl and tackling one of the largest and most constant challenges that organic farmers face, and one that we've heard a lot about, which is weed control. So without further ado, Daryl Hinderman.
Thanks, Anders. With that kind of introduction, I don't need to go any further, and we'll go right into the presentation and go from there. So, again, Anders mentioned I did work for Organic Valley, so I helped a lot of Organic Valley farmers get started back in the day. So, my second slide here is a definition of organic, and you can read that. I don't like to read my slides just because you can do as good a job as I can. But this slide means a lot, and the longer you're organic, the more you realize the importance of this slide. So just a quick show of a little bit about what that last slide meant as far as building soil biology and interdependence of all life. You got these stratified soil with these zones of different regions where different insects and nematodes, fungi, bacteria, and different below ground animals live. So, destroying those costs us fertility, oxygen, and the ability for the soil to transpose its nutrients into soluble form. So on the left side is conventional tillage, where we're in there mixing up that microflora, and we're bringing up new weed seeds all the time, is the way I see that. And I've worked hard on my weeds, and I have pretty clean fields and nice crops for as long as I've been organic farming, which was, I started in 1988, and then I got my first certification in 91, I believe it was. So really good slide, and I refer back to it occasionally just to reaffirm my beliefs in what I'm doing. So soil prep, there's a lot of different ways. If you're a beginning farmer, you may want to take and use a plow. And back when I started farming, that's what we had, and I bought several of them, and I haven't got them wore out yet, so I'm still using them. I'd like to update to something different, but my ground's been certified a long time. This is a last year's picture. Most of these slides are going to be in the last 10 months of my work, but this one was a real classic, so I used it. So after I moldboard plow, I'm not far behind with my planter, and I just moldboard plow on a lot of my fields. It just depends how they work down. And I run over it with this flex tine harrow because I don't like to overwork my ground. The more I work that ground, the more weeds come. So I'm always looking for the opportunity to moldboard plow, harrow off, and plant. So I'm just going to go back, and I get a lot of questions on this slide where guys say, well, how can you moldboard plow and harrow and plant? My ground is a little rough, but actually there's rough spots in it, maybe where a few pieces rolled through the plow and didn't quite break up because I'm not going out there at real high speed. This ground's had a lot of cover crops on it. Actually, in 1988, when I came home from my first organic meeting, I planted a cover crop on this 70-some acres here on this particular farm. So it's had a lot of cover crops on it, and I plow, work it down, and plant, and I'm always planting right behind that last tillage pass because I just know that every day that seed's in the ground, the weeds are coming. So real critical. So this is called a flex tine harrow. I know a lot of people got tine weeders. This is one of the weeding. As far as planting techniques, I don't have nothing new. I only got 292 acres certified. So, I only plant 100 acres of corn, 35, 40 acres of beans. I always use a dry fertilizer. We're just stopped here to fill, so the boxes are empty. But, I believe in, building plant strength to take and handle all the stresses that we give it from the time it's in the ground till it goes to yield. I want to keep it fed well, and I want a good nutrition program. There's liquid programs, there's dry programs, and there's a lot of companies coming on that have excellent systems. This one just happens to work for me, so I use it. I had a liquid planter when I first started, and I loved it. It was great, but I bought a dry planter, and we just switched to dry materials. So planting technique, I guess the most important thing with your planter, when I'm doing minimal tillage and I'm plowing and working down, you got to slow that planter down. We're planting at about 4 miles an hour, nice and easy. We're letting that planter set that seed, because as soon as that planter leaves the ground, the next thing that's coming is something that's going to dig in and loosen weeds. And if it nicks that corn and it jerks that root loose, your emergence is going to be a lot slower, and that's going to be a weaker plant. So, that's my comments on that planter. Is technique is all about how good of a job you make it do. The planter does only what you allow it to do. Straight rows, everybody, knows straight rows. Those are nice straight rows. This is on a farmer that I've been at out in Waterloo, actually, Roger Hubbard, and he lives out in central Iowa. Real nice man. And he, when I seen these, I just couldn't believe how straight they were. But the straighter your rows, the easier they are to cultivate. Say if you're planting 12 row, it's just as critical if you're planting 4 row. So keeping that cultivating equipment and rotary hoeing equipment running down them rows without weaving in between the row with your equipment's going to do you a lot better job. And I've seen that different times when I go to a farm to help somebody with weed control or adjusting a cultivator or rotary hoeing or whatever it is. If they went through there with the cultivator and they weren't straight, there can be an extra 4 inches of weeds along that corn plant on one side or the other, and that's tough. When you hit that slug with your cultivator, it can plug you up, or if crops get away on you, that corn gets consumed by those weeds. So straight rows, reevaluate your fields. I've helped a lot of guys do that in the last 4.5 years with crop. I take an aerial picture and I can see that they've got, they're following a lot of contouring thing, which you got to do in some cases. But wherever you get the opportunity to run into a hay field or rearrange fields, because when you're going organic, that weed control in them first 3 weeks that corn's planted is critical time for weed control. Our first, after we plant, our first tool of choice is one of these that I'm going to show you. If you don't know what a rotary hoe is, here's one. This is one that I took a picture of for a guy when I was driving by an equipment dealer. He was interested in purchasing it. Here's what it looks like, a close-up picture of those wheels. It's not the same rotary hoe. This is actually my rotary hoe I've had for a long time. I just replaced the wheels, and that hoe has been really good to me. And you use a rotary hoe about 3.5 weeks maybe at the most by the time you get done with corn and beans. So mine's nothing it's nothing new on the frame side, but I always keep new wheels on it. Actually, I put 3-4 new wheels where the rows run every year. and I moved the ones in that I took from the spot over the row. And if you do that, you never got to stop and fix or lose a wheel in the field and have a holder dragging. So just good maintenance makes a big difference on a rotary hoe. As you can see, about in the middle of the picture, that spoon right above that closest corn plant has a big spoonful of dirt. Well, that's the action you get from a rotary hoe, and that's what actually does the weed management. Is it picks up seedling weeds and tosses them into the air and exposes them to the sunlight. So we keep new wheels over the rows. Makes a big difference as far as any weeds that come. Here's a rotary hoe that's wore out. This is that rotary hoe that I looked at in the first picture, and this guy was going to buy this rotary hoe, and there's not enough spoon on there to hardly throw any dirt. So, you'd be going through the motions, but wouldn't get in the action because it takes good action. When that rotary hoe, I run my rotary hoe about 8 miles an hour is real comfortable. I might be able to bump it up to 8 too, but any faster than that, I cannot keep that tractor running right down that row. We planted a straight row, and here I'm sitting here weaving through it. So I take and do as good a job rotary hoeing as I did planting. I stay right in my tracks, and it just works better if you can control your unit. The newer tractors, I've got newer equipment, so I could go a little bit faster. But, once you get to that certain speed, and you hit a little, maybe a swale in the field, then you lose control. So, I don't even want to go there. I want to run comfortable and my operation as steady as I can for all of it. This is called a Tine weeder. These are a really nice unit. They've actually came out in the last, 8-10 years. Previous, I can't remember saying I seen one. And a lot of people have got these Tine weeders, and they are really satisfied with them. They actually have an on-the-go adjuster for those tines that are hanging on the blue part of that frame, and they are adjustable with a cylinder, so you can change the attitude of that last portion of the tine, as it's going through the ground. I've seen quite a few demonstrations at field days. And they do a great job. On up soybeans that are 7-8 inches tall, you can really whip through them, and it does a good job. Those soybeans recover quick, and they're nice units. And they make them in some really wide widths. So if you're a smaller farmer, you can get one that's a 4-row to 6-row unit, and if you're a larger farmer, you can get 30, 40, 50 feet, of tine weeders. So my weed controller is this Flex Tine Harrow that I used for my tillage. I bought this unit in 2000, and it's been so good to me. I've made so much money with this unit. I'm a 3-day to 5-day after I plant weed control guy. I used to go in with flamers and cultivators, but, once I realized, how a weed regenerates its seed to come out of the ground, I can get really good control with this by disrupting that weed seed. And when that weed seed's 3/4 of an inch long, you can scratch through the ground an inch deep, and you can see where those little white weed hairs are coming. This tool only goes about an inch deep, 1.5 inches deep. Depends how slow you run it and how many teeth you put down. You can see that it's kind of got a bow to it, and there's several runs of teeth, so I can let the full harrow down, and I do that when corn's not emerged. But I've done some great work with 2-leaf corn, going in with 4 sets of those teeth down at 6 miles an hour, and did a beautiful job of taking out, just spiked weeds that are 1/4 of an inch. I just clean that field right up, and they're just spread out all over the top of the ground. It works well when there's no crust. And even a tine weeder, if you're crusted, you got to really be careful, and you got to get those teeth set just right so that you're not building crust and smashing that corn plant down. I've got some more small corn pictures here coming up too. So here's a situation where the picture on the left where the corn row is, this whole field was flex tine harrowed at spike because we had just a little bit of rain after we planted, so we couldn't get on it right away. So I flex tine harrowed in, I think it was the 6th, 7th day, and there was my weed pressure on the left-hand side before I rotary hoed. Then I come in and I rotary hoe this corn because there's just a little bit of a crust on there, and I don't want to be sliding that crust over because, this picture, you see it's a beautiful day. You need to really be planning for weeds. This was, there was one more nice day and then 13 days of rain coming. So, our spring was really tough here in Wisconsin, and if I wouldn't have done this right then, where I went through and rotary hoed, and I got a cultivator coming right behind it, and it's a minimum till cultivator, and I'm going to slide a little dirt underneath of there because I might not get back into those fields for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. We don't know. I've been there. I've organic farmed for a long time. I haven't been in every situation, but I've been in a lot of them. All right, so here I am rotary hoeing just to give you a lateral view of, a lot of people will never rotary hoe corn this big. I've rotary hoed corn this big from the day I started because in my business I had a lot of older farmers that knew how to organic farm because the chemicals never came in until the late 50s. And I was there spraying chemicals, and they parked their weed control systems, their harrows and their rotary hoes and their cultivators, and I sprayed chemicals for them. So I had experience from those guys when I told them that I was going to start organic farming. Some of the equipment that I started with was some of my older customers said, boy, if you're going to rotary or if you're going to organic farm, you're going to need my International 100 harrow, or you're going to need my John Deere rotary hoe. It's in the back corner of the shed. I'll get her out and you come and get her. So I had a lot of help doing that because I went and picked those guys up after milking and went to my organic farms and said, well, what would you do with this? Well, they said, well, Dad always had us harrow just at a, you got a nice straight field here, harrow at about 4 rows over at just a little bit of an angle. And I'll tell you what, they knew exactly what they were talking about because that worked. So in 88 or 89, when I planted my first corn crop, it was absolutely beautiful and had about 150 bushel yield off organic crops. I was afraid to tell anybody because they'd all quit my business. I was selling chemicals and chemical fertilizers, and I never looked back. I went and updated my equipment a little bit, kept my ear to the ground for guys that, didn't like the chemical scene that I was bringing to the table in my business. And it wasn't long. I had 440 acres of organic ground, which was a lot back then, and my son and I, we managed it well, and we did a great job, and we ended up buying some of those farms, so we're pretty lucky. But you can't be afraid. When you see this picture, now a lot of farmers don't know. A lot of farmers don't get the field days. The field days are really just taking off. I remember going to field days back in the 90s, and there'd maybe be 5, 10, 8 people there. You'd think that was a good field day. Well, today, you can get 80, 90, 100 people at a field day, so it's taken off and people are learning. So all those learning efforts took a lot of time back when the people that were organic farming at its inception really had struggled. I was pretty blessed. I had farmers that were my best friends, and they helped me. They come and actually help me. So this is pretty big corn. So here I'm rolling through this corn at about 5 miles an hour. And actually, I just stepped the clutch in here, so I don't have full spring pressure down on here. I bumped my 3-point up just a little bit, but look at the action I got for getting, that dirt slid under. Here this is all cover crop, so it's exceptionally loose. But when I go one time with a rotary hoe and that dirt works up like that, I know my system is a pretty good system, because that soil texture is really the key for getting soil slid underneath that corn to cover these weeds, because you got to get a layer of dirt there, because this was already germed out once. I'm germing it out again by rotary hoeing it. Now I'm going to bring it over and with a cultivator. So I'm going to cover these little weeds up, so here was my first pass, this picture on the right. I just hopped off and took a picture of the line, just to give you a good idea of what it looks like before I rotary hoed it and what it looks like after. All right, so here's, I get a lot of people that, I've showed this picture probably 100 times in the last 6 months, and guys say, man, I'm just afraid of rotary hoeing corn like that, but so I've never seen, I bet I haven't lost 1,000 stand hoeing that corn that big. And my weed control, since I've been doing that, and I've done this for a long time, early 2000s, I took the chance, because I had a bunch of foxtail that I'm going to run that rotary hoe through that big corn and see if I can't get it. Because I ran my harrow through and I got a really good job. Didn't have no weeds. All of a sudden we had some rain, and I had about a bunch of, half-inch foxtail, and I run through it with the rotary hoe, and then I cultivated, and I got 99% control of that. So I had a few maybe breakthrough, because 99% control of a million weeds per 10 square foot, still some weeds. You do as good as you can do. So here's a picture of that running right through. Plus you can see a few of these rotary hoes, they're just like, they've got very little wear on them compared to that one that was wore out. Don't buy something wore out unless you plan on coming in and replacing those wheels. All right, next is, I'm moving into the cultivators. There may be some more tools out there, some finger weeders and things like that, but, those are the basic tools that we've been working with. New stuff's coming all the time, so if you see something new and it wasn't on my slideshow, it's just that I didn't get a picture of it yet. So anyway, front mount cultivator, here's one of my guys that I know really well and worked with him back through the 90s getting certified organic, and he's got this nice front mount. And actually there's a little shield, on each one of those narrow point ones. That's called a flow shield, and they work pretty darn good. He's just not going to go out and spend any more money. He's only got 100 and maybe 30, 40 acres of corn, so this is what he can afford. And he's made good money on organics, but this is the equipment they got. There's different things that you can bolt on and help you get dirt slid under there. This particular farm is in Dodgeville, and Dodgeville had a lot of rain. They had about 15 inches of rain. So, he was wet. His weeds were pretty big. He's always going in hay fields that he double discs. Well, when you get that much rain, as you can see all them hay plants and weeds hanging off that outside shovel, he was in some pretty tough stuff. I just was coming by and happened to stop in and seen he was out cultivating, so I walked out the field there. And when I got there, I said, wow, you're missing a lot of weeds. I got a set of flow shields we can put on this cultivator, and you'll get, 99% control. So I walked back, drove my van up there, and we put a set on. And I stayed there for about a half an hour, and it was just a 200% increase in weed control on those fields. So that's part of my job, is helping guys like that. Here's another one. Here's a really nice one. This is I think this is a Yetter, and it's a no-till cultivator, and you can see the coulters inside of there that these are set for hilling. Another feature, if you're not on GPS, there's this little white box, and then there's a couple of wires in the foreground of this picture. That's a navigation system, and you get farmers with maybe 200, 300 acres of corn that are not on GPS, buy these types of systems. They're a little less cost, and they do work pretty good as long as you're managing your weeds up front. if you're going into a weed patch and you got 10-inch weeds, these little wires ride between the rows, and they're not going to ride between the rows very good if you got a lot of weeds in there. So you may have to do a pre-cultivate pass without this unit and then come back in once you get zeroed in. Back in the mid 90s, these were real popular. These were the newest thing out in weed control back then. A lot of guys still got them and use them. They maintained them well, and they work good. I don't even have a system like that. I just got a little rod coming off my front axle that I use, and with 90, 100 acres of corn, we get it really good and clean. So, we're happy. This is a new photography generated guidance system. So, that silver rod right up in the front holding a camera that's aimed on the row, and that guides this navigator. It says row guard right behind the tire there, and that's got a cylinder on it that the cylinder slides through the holder and moves that cultivator. I helped this gentleman set this cultivator up, so I worked with it for a day and a half darn near, and we really fine-tuned it, and he did a great job. If you go online to Einbach, Z-I-N-B, an odd O-C-K, they do have some videos on there. I've got some, but the quality isn't quite as good as what they've got. But this thing works really well. I got a couple of more pictures of it because, this is the new technology, and I'm probably gonna buy one of these cultivators. This is the best thing I've seen so far. And there's different companies that make different versions of this. I'm sure I'll look at them all. They've got really nice finger weeders on them. And these were a little tough to adjust, but, I spent 3 hours walking behind that cultivator adjusting these to the perfect closeness and tension for this soil, and it's going to change every soil. I mean, you're running in a clay soil, you're going to have to put just a little more pressure down. This is a lighter soil, maybe 20% sand, but, a sandy silt loam this would be. And it's got little drivers there. If you look at the very first one to the left, they've got little spikes underneath of that. That's actually a hard rubber star wheel. And once you put that in the ground, that spins with the motion. But it really does a nice job. I was just so impressed. He had super clean corn here. And, these units are in the upper 30s, 30,000 for a 6-row unit. I think I got one more picture. Yes, I do. One thing that's really nice is this real fine cutting equipment. It doesn't move a lot of dirt compared to other no-till cultivators. That's what I don't like about my no-till cultivator, and I've had my no-till cultivator for 17 years. It's done us, it's paid its way the first 20 acres that I cultivated with it, because it really does cover weeds. But it moves a lot of dirt, and I don't want to move that much dirt anymore. I want to take and go in there and move a minimal amount of soil, undercut my weeds, and leave things more intact. I think that makes more sense. And the more dirt we move, as a rule, more horsepower it takes. So, that's all dollars. Horsepower, the first thing when you see big horsepower, number one, do you need it, and what's it costing you? So it makes sense to me not to move soil and do a better job of eliminating weeds in that top 2 to 3 inches, and not bringing any more back up, but deal with what you got to eliminate. So, this front little knife on the top right, that has a really nice, it's actually got just a little bubble on it, so that it kind of swings over, and you can get real close to that plant. This cultivator runs about a 2.5-inch gap between shovels at 5.5 miles an hour. It runs pretty comfortably. I got to run it quite a bit the couple days I was there. All right, so here's an older style, just a manual type, no-till type cultivator also. It's pretty much like that yellow one, that Yetter that's there. It's got coulters in the front and guards, and this is actually on my farm, And, we're cultivating plenty early just because of the weather. The 15-day forecast is going to be nice till the next day at noon. And this was in the afternoon just from the sun. It was probably about 1 o'clock, So we had 75 acres to cultivate. We actually got 2 of these units and 2 tractors and one on a rotary hoe. So we're not hooking and unhooking. We're just getting this job done. So just to give you an idea, as a rule, we wouldn't push dirt in this tight. But with the forecast we had and the extended forecast and watching the weather, I could just about feel we were going to be 3 weeks before we got to cultivate again, just with the rain amounts that were coming, because they had heavy rains in Missouri, out in Kansas, Colorado, all through. It never rained a lot in California, but once it got in here, it picked up moisture out of the mountains and it come this way with a vengeance. So we cultivated like we weren't going to get to cultivate again. That's how much forward thinking you got to have in organics. You got to be looking ahead and saying, okay, let's see, I got a forecast that looks bad for 3 weeks. If I don't get those small weeds, and I might cover a little corn here and there. I didn't cover much corn. We've used this cultivator for 17 years. We got it figured out really well. So we just shoved a lot of dirt up under there. We got a lot deeper than what we wanted. As a rule, we don't move that much dirt. But I really didn't want to throw dirt. I just wanted to force dirt up. So I dropped the beam on my cultivator ahead, dropped it in the ground a little more, so I'm pulling a little dirt with my point, which I really never usually do. But this was the situation, and this is how I had to react, not to have a bunch of weeds in that crop, because I just will not deal with them. So, we did some fine adjustments. We dropped the shields a little bit and kind of forced that dirt right up underneath the shield. And we did a really good job of weed control. We had a little quackgrass in here, but, we got our troublesome weeds like velvet leaf and lamb's quarter, red root pigweed, cockleburr. We got some cockleburr drug through our fields from our combine from another farm. So we're dealing with those a little bit. So next picture, here's a situation. So, okay, there was my corn. And here's a guy that didn't cultivate. He didn't plan like I planned. And there he's got 28-inch corn and 10-inch weeds. How are you going to deal with that? So he called me up. He's actually a crop cooperative grain member. He's got a couple loads contracted to us, and he's a very, very nice person, and I like working with him. And so he called me up and asked if I had time to stop up, and I was up in that region, so I did stop in. And I looked at this field, and I said, well, you don't have a cultivator that's going to move enough soil to get this. I said, so I showed him a couple pictures of mine and, what I can do with mine. And I said, if you get one like this, granted it's going to be, you can use it anytime. He actually owns a sign box. And he did this field a couple of days before he called me. And then when I come up, we adjusted it for that other farm. And we did a great job. But on this farm, I said, we should go back there, Sandy, and redo this, because that night we went over, looked at this. I says, boy, you're just going to have a mess here in a few weeks. And sure enough, he calls me up 3 weeks later. So, we talked about it, but I want to talk just a little bit about the middle. So here he went in there with that real fine shovel, cut 1 inch of soil, and look how clean those rows stood through all that rain. That's 3.5 weeks, no weeds broke through. What's that tell you? Don't go deeper and bring up new weed seeds. Stay in that zone that makes really good sense. So I told him he should maybe look for a no-till cultivator. He called his equipment dealer. Next morning he had this white 3000 delivered to his farm. So I went back and we jacked it up, and it was set up for conventional farming, which, they're just cutting a few weeds and they're not really moving soil. To make this thing move soil, you got to drop that. You got to drop that coulter. You can see right behind that red tire, that coulter. Okay, so what we did is we dug down, seen where the roots were, so that we knew that we weren't going to prune any roots, because if we would have got the weeds and pruned roots and there'd have been a windstorm, that corn would be on the ground. You cannot prune roots. In organics, we're scavenging for all the nitrogen and all the nutrients we can get, because we're not big big fertilizer numbers people. We're trying to be sustainable and get our plant food from the soil. This guy's a real biological farmer. He puts on, different biology and composts and things. So what it took was to get 10 inches of dirt up in that wheel. So we had to move the wheel, move the coulter over, drop it in the ground about 5.5 inches before we could get enough dirt coming up that coulter, because we had to, you got a weed standing there like this, and if you push dirt against it, all you're going to do is smash that against the corn, and it's just, you're never going to get it. Yes?
Would you cultivate corn any taller than that? Or what's like the tallest you think you would let the corn go?
Well...
Can you repeat the question, Daryl? Repeat the question.
Okay, repeat the question. He's asking how tall of corn can you cultivate? Well, as long as you can get your equipment through it without busting it off. And there was a lot of that went on this year because of the weather, because of the rain. That corn got big, weeds were there, so my cultivator, under that row that you can see there,
It's almost hitting the frame.
all that paint on my cultivators is wore off because I make those last passes and I get all those late weeds because, if you don't get the late weeds when you get a chance, and you don't get that second trip or third trip through, and you got to go scout your fields. It's no different than if you're a conventional farmer. Hey, you watch them guys, they're out spraying chemicals. They can be spraying chemicals in June yet on weeds. Well, we don't have chemicals, so we've got to make those passes to clip those weeds and get that soil cleaned up, because come fall, as soon as that corn dies down and that sunlight hits the ground, those weeds, boom, they're taking off and they'll grow. They're in where it's warm, where the cool weather doesn't affect them as much. And, a lot of times you can see a field drying down and green weeds growing up. Lamb's quarter, ragweed, foxtail usually doesn't get that high. Cocklebur doesn't get that high, but you can get lamb's quarter, red root pigweed, and ragweed growing above the corn in the fall. And I've had it happen to me years back. So I'm not afraid to make that trip. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so my next picture, so you can just barely see it. This picture isn't as good. Sometimes if the resolution's just right, you can see that. You can just barely see it. And right there was our first pass, so that was really, really a mess, and it worked pretty good. So what he's got to do to finish cleaning that up, he's going to have to make another pass. So, but we put some dirt over top of those weeds. We didn't smash them together. Real critical. If you begin to organic farm, get a mentor where somebody can really help and show you those types of things. Here's another situation. This is same thing, 19 inches of rain up in central Wisconsin. It's one of our dairy transition farms. Ran into the same trouble, I got there to help him rotary hoe. Things were nice and clean. He went through with his first pass of cultivator, and he didn't have a real new cultivation equipment. He called me up. I says, well, in your situation, get what's available. He had a limited budget. He had a couple $1,000s to spend. That was his budget. Well, he found a Glencoe C-Shank, which is a pretty nice cultivator. I tell you what, you can make anything work. You just got to know how to adjust it and how to set it up. So he went through and we did some measurements to make sure we weren't pruning roots. We took a shovel. I got a little garden spade in there, and that's really critical. And that's another thing with straight rows. If you haven't got a guidance system and you're setting tight and you're weaving through that field pruning rows, I guarantee it can cost you 10, 15, 20 bushel plus blow down. Then your combining time is way, way more. A lot more hours on the machine. If you're getting custom work done, that guy's going to get real disgusted, especially if it's his first year with you. If it's nice and clean and you're doing a professional job, anybody will come and combine your crops. If they're a weed patch, you're going to have trouble if you don't own your own unit. So here was pretty nice looking corn. One thing I didn't get to is I didn't get to visit with this gentleman, and this is his first year in transition. He should have upped his population. He only planted 27,000 on a 30-inch row. I'm up in that low 30s, 32.8 I think is where I'm set, because I just get better yields when I step my population up. I've had test plots for 18 years, and my best yields are always on highest populations. So you need to do that kind of work. I got a slide here on, and I'll elaborate maybe just a little more. So, this is a lot of grass. There's a few broadleaves in there, but he's in a tight hay rotation. He's a dairyman, so he's got a dairy rotation. That's the easiest rotation to manage. So he's coming through. This has one of those flow shield kits on it too. I put one on right away because I knew he was going to have trouble. And he plowed sod pretty rough, and I knew we were going to be getting into the clumps with this unit because, Glencoe's going to go deep when you need to move this kind of soil. And, this was pretty weedy. This had just dried out enough to really get on there. And, I knew these weeds were really going to take off. We got one swing is basically what we're going to get with this type of a cultivator. So we come through, and actually, if you look to the rows on the right, it's pretty clean. There's a little bit of grass there, and then I stopped at a bad place for the picture. I'm standing right on the edge of a waterway, so that stand is even a little bit thinner. But we really did a nice job on the weeds. This guy was really happy. He was really, really concerned. He had 270 acres of corn like this, and he didn't split up his planting. I gave him a lot of good ideas. And when you jump into 270 acres and you're a new organic farmer, I can just about imagine what your mind's going through. So you break up that planting date. I'm an early planter. I've been pretty lucky to. My soil seems to warm up quick, and I can plant. I think I planted May 9th this year, which is pretty early for organics. It was a great crop. I think some of those pictures on those first cultivation pictures of that no-till one were one of my farms, and that Rotary Hoeing was on one of my farms. So I think I planted the 8th. I planted before the rain even started and got through. We had 2 swings of rain, so I had all my stuff done before I made hay on the 21st of May. So my corn grew quick. I got through it with the weeding. I got 150 acres of hay made, all dry except for 50 big squares. It just hit it because I watched the weather. All right, so here's another thing, flame weeding. I had a flamer for 10 years. In 2000, my son, he was 19. He was just scared to death of that flamer. He just wanted nothing to do with it. So we went out and bought that harrow, kept the flamer for a year, never used it, and the first year with the harrow, the guy that sold it to us from down in Illinois, he was pretty knowledgeable. So I had some good information. I went over it in 3 days, went back over it in 8 days with 4 teeth on the ground. Boom, it was done. I had just minimal expense, and that harrow was pretty reasonable back then. They've doubled in price since I bought mine in 2000. Now that you're up in that $9,000, $10,000, $12,000 range, which is pretty cheap for a piece of weeding equipment. So I've got a lot of experience with a flamer, and I helped some guys with flamers this year and actually saved some crops. They had 30 days of rain up in St. Croix Falls. That's a big vegetable area. We've got members up there, dairy members and grain growers. So I went up there for a week actually, and just struggled getting things cleaned up because it rained every day I was there. It'd be nice in the morning. We'd get 2 tenths, 3 tenths, just enough to pull you out of the field. Sit around for a little bit, go work on some equipment, check what fields need to be done first and the quickest. And, we burned, I don't know how many tanks. I ran it I helped set it up and ran it most of a day. And so, yeah, just this specific one, actually. All right, so here's just a little, picture, just a recap. Okay, so we seen the rotary finger weeders. That crop protection shield was just on that flamer. These side discs were on that, both of those no-till cultivators. That Glencoe had these 250 and 300 shovels on them. They're the top left group there. So this is what you got to kind of pick from. I used a lot of scrapers when I first started. And a scraper is far right center. There's 2 little scrapers. I used a lot of scrapers. I ran through and had scrapers set about 3 inches because I had 4 kids and 4 antique John Deere tractors, and I cultivated 140 acres of corn with those. And my kids run them, and I just followed them around on a three-wheeler, making sure they were adjusted properly, and turned them around on the ends, so it went really good. And here's last call, you got to get the weed pullers in if guys got ragweed pressure that you're not going to get buried if it's with the corn. You got to go get them pulled right away. All you got to do is pull this much. The rest you can get buried. This is a farm up in Iowa. We actually have a crew of 20 that work in southwest Wisconsin for about 25, 30 of us. And they're real good guys. They've been pulling weeds. In 2000, we got weed pullers in because we weren't going to let the ragweed come. We run the weed pullers through and pull, this wide of ragweeds. And then we had those no-till cultivators, so we pretty much did a good job. We could roll in there, and we put some bigger discs on so we weren't going deep and get close. So we did some things. And it's all about foreseeing problems with that cultivator and getting it in the ground. Okay, research plot. This is a research plot. We've had 18 research plots in a row because we looked for shade density because we're on wide rows. We looked for early emergence. We'd rotary hoe and then go out and look at every variety and see what took the hoeing the best. And we're big in-row fertilizer people, and we grow hay, so we got to fertilize somehow. And cover crop, we're pretty intensive cover crop folks. This was moldboard plowed, mulched with a mulcher, and planted, and it was never touched again, other than one deep tillage pass that we tried with our no-till cultivator. We pulled the shovels up and put a trench in there in case we got intensive rain. I was just a little afraid of that. And this was a really good yielding plot. So
we just have a couple minutes left with short course students. I want to make sure that they have questions.
All right, great. Fertility, big issue. If you're out there cultivating, rotary hoeing, dragging a hair over, poor fertility and your corn's spindly, you're going to have trouble. Rotation's another big plus. We broke all our farms up and planted hay. We're in a dairy-rich area. We can market all that hay. We plant 20 pounds of pure alfalfa. We cut I'm pulling in to cut second crop, and I think it's like June 22nd or something. So we're taking those crops when they're just starting good bud. This was last year. We pulled the weed pullers in. We did a great job. We had this is 61 bushel beans. Actually, we went in and we did some work, and we kept 4 rows that we just did with our equipment. And then we had the weed pullers come in. This is a 38 acre piece, and we had them pull all the weeds. It cost $170 an acre. And we made money spending $170 an acre on that because we got 11 bushel. Yeah.
I just kind of want to go back to the moldboard plow.
Sure.
It's kind of a two-part question.
Yeah.
So do you first, do you moldboard plow every year? And 2, are you worried about the plow pan when you moldboard plow every year then?
Well, I plant a lot of cover crops after my hay. That's kind of strange, but I fit that cover crop system in where I can get a return on my seed investment. So I'm a real tight rotator. I got 25% of my acres approximately in corn, 25 in small grain, and half in alfalfa. After 2 years in hay, after third crop, I go in and scuff, and I got some pictures of that, but you're going to miss them. But I can leave this program with Anders, and he can go back through it. But that gives me my plow pan cure without. One time in the history of my farm, I went over and rented a big tractor from one of the implement dealers, and one of these great big deep tillage, vertical type deep till, and it didn't pull that hard, So I said, well, I don't know if I got it, but I did it all anyway, just to say that I did that because I was kind of, the talk of the area about 10 years ago. A lot of guys were renting equipment and running through with, so we did our land just to see. I don't know if it helped or not. I couldn't actually say that my next year's yield was any better. I've always had.
Really, you only moldboard plow after your alfalfa stand? Or
in the spring, yeah, I plow 2 years in a row. I plow for small grain, and I plow after my second year of hay. I plant all annuals cover crop, and I moldboard in the spring. but I moldboard real shallow. That first picture, if you'd have looked, I'm about 5 inches, 5.5 inches deep with that plow. That's it. So holding it in the ground there, you need pretty level fields, straight rows, and I just plant through my, one time with the harrow, I can fill pretty much plowing that shallow, and not have to deal with a dead furrow or a head furrow. I might swing over and drive that head furrow down, whatever it takes. And, we farmed these farms for 20 some years organically. We got our dead furrow and our head furrow. We're set and we know exactly where it's at. And we make sure that we line up. So if you'd have looked at that first slide, the planter was right between the dead furrow because we drive in the same place all the time. We plant in the same, we farmed that farm since 71, and transitioned it in 88. So we had a lot of years on that farm.
That's good. We're going to take off tomorrow, study hall, 8 o'clock. I'll be here with pizza, your dinner, learn some more, have some conversations, talk about your homework from last week as well as the final assignments coming up. And did everyone fill out a blank spot on the sheet? Excellent.
Hey, thanks, folks. Nice for meeting you guys.
Yep.
All right, so good to carry on?
Good to carry on.
All right. Okay, I was talking about, running weed pullers through, and, I know it pays. I've done it for a long time. I had a lot of history. We've used those weed pullers. We're into second generation, and, they're good hard workers. Here was my 2015 corn crop. I had 90 some acres that looked just like this, and we had tough going. I just got done cultivating. You can see where I drove out of the ends there, and I just couldn't resist popping a picture. So we were lucky. Our corn, we farmed for 200 bushel, 215. We put the fertilizer. We figure our cover crop and our alfalfa. And, I was down about 30 bushel yield because of excess water that took my nitrogen. Because as a rule, my corn's just a little bit greener than this. So, but the stay green was good in the fall. My ears all finished out. My test weight was good. So I was happy. Anytime I got a field that looks this nice, I'm happy in organics. All right, rotation. Here's where my nitrogen comes from. I grow a nice thick stand of hay. I leave it in 2 years, plant a cover crop behind it, and I'm getting it. I did plant wheat for a while at the beginning, but, I can move hay, and I can grow a cover crop behind it, and I can ease my life by just having 3 crops. For the most part, guys that are in bigger acres and need some more rotation, hey, wheat's a great one. If you get it in thick enough and take care of it with fertility, it just about competes with weeds as good as a conventional system. All right, so, when I'm done, here's probably the key to my weed control. If you looked at every slide that I showed on my farm, I had all that matter there. And, I'm putting on approximately like 8 pounds of tillage radish, 15 pounds of Sudan grass, 25 to 30 pounds of oats, 20 pounds of Austrian pea. I always order a few extra soybeans. I put some soybeans in there. I'm planting late enough. I don't have to worry about buckwheat. It'll go to seed, but I've never had it become an issue. I put 10 pounds of buckwheat in there. I even put a couple pounds of vetch in there. And, there's my cover crop. But I got to do one thing after, because I'm putting my cover crop on alfalfa, and I've tried this several times. I've done this for a long time. I got to run through, and this particular farm, I had a disc at that farm, so I didn't go get, my digger and dig it. So I just scuffed this field, planted this cover crop. So the cover crop is coming through, and that hayfield looked dead. I mean, I didn't have enough room on this slideshow to bring, 100 pictures to really go through every slide in every situation. But, people, here I am August 2nd out discing a hayfield, planting a cover crop. You got to do things out of the box when you're in organics, because that's what I got to do to grow my weed control. suck up the nitrogen from my alfalfa plants and a tillage reddish root, grow some organic matter with sedan grass and the whole mix. Oats is a great weeder. Mycorrhizae fungi promoter. Four of them, 7 are. So I'm not just growing weed control. I'm growing fertility. I'm growing tilth. I'm growing organic matter. I'm conserving nitrogen. All the things that organic farmers have to do to be more profitable. I want maximum profitability. I'm not going out there for my health. I'm going out there to build a system of sustainability. So my cover crops, cover crops is a buzzword. Every one of these, there's 15 that were on this page that I was reading over. I just put a few of the highlights on. I put the first one and the last one, increase my tilth and porosity. That I need for my weeding equipment. If I don't have that tilth and that action I get out of my rotary hoe and out of my equipment, I don't get the weed control. Feed and soil biology builds my natural excretion of soil fertility that comes out of the dirt. Every handful of soil is fertilizer. Just can't get to the plant unless it dissolves in water. So here's what that cover crop mix looked like. I walked up to about the same spot in the field, and actually I've got every week, 10 days, I took pictures all the way to Thanksgiving. This was up to my belt. Now, I'm a pretty short guy. I'm only 5'7", but I tell you what, that cover crop is up to my belt, so that's 3 foot. That's got to be how many tons of dry matter that I'm putting back into the soil and feeding my biology and giving me better water penetration. And, it just, so my moldboard plow, I'm cruising through there and I'm not in a race. I'm doing a real nice job. I have one speed for all my equipment and I do a real nice job. I don't get that dirt thrown off that cover board and spraying over the field. I lay that over real nice so that my harrow works good and I'm not working that ground and planting it. The reason that I got that system is I had one of my farmers pull up when I was plowing, and he said, slow down. When I used to do this, he said, I'd plow real slow. And he said, sometimes I wouldn't even do nothing. I'd just plant right in that, and that corn would just grow and be clean as could be. And so I was pretty blessed. How many people told you that when you organic farmed in your second year pull up? That was a dedicated customer and a friend of mine. So, here's a real good, look at all my passes, and you can compare this to your own farm. This is the gauge of where you're at with your cover crops in your system. When you got soil that looks like this guy's left hand or to your right, and I remember when I started, I'd pick up clumps of soil, that it was conventionally farmed for the history of the farm. That's what my dirt looked like. Now my dirt looks like that. And I even showed you that where I ran through with a rotary hoe, 5 inches of hard rain. That was all the crust I had on that ground. I didn't jump the fence and go over to the neighbors, but I bet they had 3/4 of an inch. I only had about 1/4. So I probably could have got by without rotary hoeing, but I want excellent control, and I know that would have cost me if I wouldn't have done that. So here's how big my corn is, and I'm holding back from doing anything because I don't have any weeds. I got a couple sprigs I got one. There might be a couple there if you look really hard, but not enough to go get concerned about and spend money on. Maybe I can get by with just one quick cultivation, run the weed pullers through if I got any ragweeds in the row, and maybe I can just make 2 quick cultivation passes. Every field's different. And the longer your organic farm, you're going to see that. You're going to know what you can get away with in each field, within each farm. This farm's been organic since I bought this farm in 2000, and the guy I bought it from was a really good customer of mine, and he was real conservative. And he didn't put any fertilizer on it the 2 years before. And then he come up and he asked me if I wanted to buy it, and I knew right then why he didn't put fertilizer on it. He's going to sell it. So it was just kind of comical. I said, sure, Norbert, I'll take it. And it's been a peach of a farm. It's an 80. So here's just a little, talking about feed and soil biology. Soil biology is so new that most farmers have never seen a picture of it. I went to a biology school out in Corvallis, Oregon, by some really prominent researchers, And these are all the pictures I got to see. There was 10 slides here, but I just put this one in. I guess the take-home point is, they excrete plant-available nutrients. How much more do I have to read before I say, I'm doing that? Because I know how important that is. Our next phase of organic is sustainability, because we're here gobbling up fertilizers and things, and there's methods that, can we get it from the soil? Can we bury enough organic matter in a cover crop to take and feed these different strains of bacteria? And there's hundreds and hundreds per class. Each one of these is a different class that you're seeing here. And they're just identifying hundreds per class. I think they got like 147, of just one strain ID'd. So there's millions and millions. They say there's 2 billion in a tablespoon. So I don't know if that's true or not. I didn't have time to count because it was really neat though, looking through those microscopes, and seeing what's out there and what we got to look forward to in agriculture. We're in the brightest time in history as far as sustainable, because organic farmers are going to get a chance to learn how to go sustainable. So anyway, why don't I take some questions now? And
the question was about ragweed. What kinds of ragweed and what
sure.
you're doing?
Aaron, there's two different kinds of ragweed. You got common and giant. Giant ragweed, is usually more predominant in corn, and common ragweed is usually more predominant in small grains after the harvest. It's there, but a lot of times it's under the oats and you just don't see it, but it's there. So we grow a lot of oats. We grow 1/4 of our farm in oats because we grow some seed feed. Basically, we're a feed mill now. We grew a lot of seed with the university actually back in the day. But we just grow some. Guys want to chop it and toss it in as a cover crop. We'll put some down. But, ragweeds, if you let ragweeds go, them giant ragweeds, they'll consume your farm. And you better be ready for that. So since 2000, people see those Spanish families come, all sizes now, because and we treat them like human beings. We give them fuel cards, anything to get them there and give them the respect so that they can work into society. In this area, they do a great job on dairies, and the farmers that do have them hired for their dairy. I know those guys personally, and they're glad that I come and offered them a job and gave them more money, and I pay them really well, and I give them gas cards, high V coupons, so they can feed their kids organic food and fit into the system that they're living. Mm-hmm. So, but ragweed's a bad weed, and if you don't take care of it, it'll take care of you. A lot of people, probably the number one reason why people exit organics is ragweed.
That was my impression. So you go out there and you hand pull.
Sure.
Seeing it
Yeah.
in the field. Okay.
Yeah, I don't mind hand pulling. In July when it's hot, I can take and get up at 4:45. The sun's out, and I can get a lot done. I don't let it get this tall. Hey, here you go. Ragweed pulls easy here, pulls harder here. Here it's 2 fingers. Here it's 3, 4, hand, 2 hands.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you use those mechanical? Like there's those wheels that mechanically rip it out of the ground?
I've got some pictures, and I wanted to put that on the slideshow, but I already had an hour.
But
Had an hour.
You do those. They do work?
I was at one of our members, and he was on wide rows too. So we're getting our numbers up there. When we plant soybeans, we plant 13 seeds per foot at a 92 germ. So we got a really thick stand. So when that wheel comes, and now they're making these offset tigered wheels that are really nice. Actually, I looked it over and went to the website, and the guy sent me a picture. I made him at his show, and we had a great conversation. And I can see where there's a use for it. But when them wheels come together and pull that weed up, a lot of times they're bringing two, three plants because, say if they were this big, it'd be different. Yeah. But you can't run that unit through then. It's just too close. You got to get some distance there.
Okay.
And, I've had some guys that had one, and, I hate to tell bad things about a piece of equipment, but I'm going to tell the truth. That dirt on there, you got to be protected from that, because even if there's a stone in there, it hit him behind the head. You know, he had it behind him, and he was rolling through. And that dirt's hitting there. I mean, you got to have a hooded sweatshirt. You need a cab tractor. You need safety. Safety's your main concern out there. You know, I don't care if it's Rotary or what. You know, when we go in and we do applications like that, we run cab tractors just to be safe. And you know, so that dirt's on there, and that's coming through the wheel too. That clump of dirt can be, you know, if it's dry, it pulls great, but if it's a little bit wet, look out. You know, so, but hey, they got their place, you know, and down the road we're going to have more and more people involved in organic. You're going to see somebody that's going to buy one and rent it out. You know, we rented out our rotary to our farmers through our business. I mean, our business started we owned a lot of land. We never farmed it until '88 because there was no money in it. 1988, the corn price was $1.48, and there was no money. I don't care who you were. You know, I know what the fertilizer prices were. I sold thousands of tons, so, you know, I was on top of that. And I wasn't getting into something where I was exercising for a job. I'll work my business and take time to spend it with my family, but so, you know, that answers your question. Ragweed will kill you. Yes.
Do you have any trouble with residue on your plow when you're plowing down 3-foot high crop?
Question is about residue when you're plowing down larger crop.
Sure. Well, all those cover crops that I just gave you were all annuals. So, you know, come spring, they're right down tight on the ground, and by the time it comes to plowing, we don't plug at all because the hay kind of come through it and it's holding it all down there. You know, and we're not plowing that deep, so we got a lot of room. You know, we got our coulter set to the bottom of the cut, and we got a nice plow, 2 nice plows. You know, so we haven't plugged because I knew that was coming. You know, plow.
So the vetch hasn't been a problem?
No, we only put like a pound down, just so we got diversity in there. And we only put a couple pounds of 5 pounds of buckwheat. The rate's 50, so we're sprinkling it out there pretty thin. The only thing I want those tillage radish, because in the spring, and you got to be there just at the perfect time. There's about 3 days where you can work that root of tillage radish out, you know, and pull a 30-inch root of all green, smells like nitrogen, you know, the things like a rag. You know, and then after that, you know, as soon as that ground firms just ever so slightly, all you pull is the top. And the top crumbles in your hand. You know, because they're one of the first things to go down. They don't take frost well. It takes a while because the top's got to die. You know, that stuff was still growing. We deer hunted on that farm after Thanksgiving, and that we had a struggle to go through that cover crop because we just never had no frost. So we had August, September, October, November. I got 4 months out of my cover crop. I got my money out of it. If I would have planted that in October, it's kind of a break even, you know. So I just I want to go where I can get my return, you know, and that's what it took me to figure that out, you know.
And that was 2 cuttings of hay before that, though?
3. We cut May
3.
21st,
3. Okay.
June 26th, August. You know, and every time we missed the rain, we were really lucky. And we've been pretty lucky all the time. We watch that. If we get 5-day window, we take 2 disc pines and 2 tractors and we cut all our hay down. And we start making dry until it gets tough and call the wrapper in. That way we're on schedule and our hay all moves. You know, right now that hay market's it's in trouble. There's so much alfalfa out there on the conventional side that it actually stopped the organic side. I had a lot of people transition in the last 4.5 years that, you know, they all transitioned with alfalfa, you know, and I showed them pictures of when to cut so they had quality. Well, see, the poor quality stuff used to move because they were out of it. But now, you know, the lower end hay's not moving. If you had 180 RFQ and you put an ad in the paper, I bet it'd be gone in a week. But if you put 140 in, you know, they're not going to buy it until they're out in March and April. Just that's the way farmers buy. You know, they're not going to contract poor quality. They'll buy what they have to at the time that they're getting close. So, all right. So we got some questions. Any more?
We got questions online. We can start to go through. We can get back to the classes. We have them. The first one is, could you talk a little more about your rotations, what you rotate and when? You kind of got into this. Do you always take alfalfa hay, or do you mow occasionally and leave as green manure?
I can't remember the last time that I didn't plant a cover crop on my hay, other than a field where I was unsure. I've got a really good hay market. We got a lot of dairies right there, and guys put in orders and they say, well, I want, 150 bales of first crop and, 80 bales a second. And, we get 28 bales on a load, so there's our sales. And we move it all. We move 1,800 big squares of hay. So, occasionally we didn't get confirmation, and I'm not going to let those customers sit. Those are our business customers that buy their mineral and their calf feed and their heifer grower and their seeds and their fertilizers and everything from us. And I'm not going to cut them short because they know how we fertilize, how we farm, and what we do. So there's occasionally I will let that hay grow up, and if I have to, those are about the last fields I take down because they're going to be a little slower to warm up because I thinned out my stand. I put my cover crop on. I guarantee you they're going to be drier, and I'll be able to roll them over, harrow down, and plant. And it takes a while to moldboard plow things. But we can be planted in 3 days, 30 acres a day. We actually got 2 plows. So, I've been working for Organic Valley, so I'm not on. But, it always works out that I'm home some, and, I can't work every day for Organic Valley. I got to take some vacation time. I take it in the spring. So, I hope that answers your question. But, I run a pretty tight rotation because that takes care of my weed pressure, and if you get good crops of all your classes of crops, your budget always works out pretty true. Corn's king. That it always has been. It probably always will because we can't grow 75 bushel of soybeans. I don't know why. We should be capable, but I haven't been able to do it. 62, I think, is the top I ever had it. And we do plant a few soybeans. We plant one field a year because we buy 4,000 or 5,000 bushel of soybeans a year for our mill. So we need something there in case the price swings on it, that we got our own to keep things level, so we don't raise and lower our prices to our customers.
Yeah.
So is your rotation then typically corn, bean, alfalfa, and a cover crop?
Yeah, but only one field of soybeans a year is all we plant, so that piece might be 30, might be 15, might be 12, and we're not selective because we farmed all those acres for so long organic. I'm not afraid to put them anywhere. I'll put it on my porous ground and maybe put a little P and K and manganese and do a soil test on it and do a little extra balance. And, I've always been around that 50 to 60 bushel yield. Mm-hmm. It takes pretty bad weather for us to get under that 60 or under the 50. This year we were only 51. Last year we were 61. Too much rain. Mm. Okay.
All right, next question. What % of row crop do you have to terminate because weeds get out of control? So you can give an answer for a typical year and a bad year.
Well, we've been pretty fortunate. We've started over once in the history of our farm where we have a really nice field cultivator that I bought at a sale just for that, and I used it once. And that was about 15 years ago. We had so much rain that the weeds, the whole field was green. I looked at what it was going to cost me to manually pull that. That was even before I had weed pullers. The Spanish families never moved to our area until about 2000, about 15 years ago, and that's when we started using them. And so me terminating crops is not. I watch the weather. If there's a 5-inch rain coming, I just leave the equipment in the shed. We watch the weather. That's why I plant early, because I seen that early heat, and then we always get that rain, so we watch that. And if we can get away with plowing, ground dries out real nice, harrow plant, we're up in 6 days, we're going to take that. So, as far as us, we've never done a soybean crop. We've always salvaged that if we had it. Because you can rotary hoe however many times you want on soybeans. I've rotary hoed beans 6 times on 5 acres of a field just to see what it would take. And that didn't hurt my stand. The beans were even, I want to say 6 inches tall, and the rotary hoe kind of kinked the plant a little bit. But in a few weeks, I went back and checked that. I could barely see that spot on the stem. Granted, you've injured it a little bit, but, Here, just an example. I don't like putting chemicals to organic situations, but I sprayed chemicals for 16 years. I had Big A's, Terragators, and the chemical company said, well, if you stun those beans a little bit with this herbicide, the roots get bigger and your yields come up. So I thought, well, why don't I'll just rotary hoe one that way when somebody asks me, have you ever rotary hoed beans at this height? Because I worked organic since '88. I wanted to know for myself. I thought it did a good job, and I wouldn't be afraid to do it to take more weeds out. And a lot of times we rotary hoe just before we cultivate on soybeans too, so that our nice loose dirt doesn't ridge up, so that we're not skinning dirt and getting every bean with that header.
All right, and this question is something that we were actually talking about before class, so it's pertinent, and that's the best way to minimize weeds during transition. They're concerned because they have low soil organic matter and fertility.
Well, I know wheat's not the greatest. Well, none of it's a great profit. Look at finding a buyer for hay, maybe, and seeding down for a couple years, and make yourself. You got to start somewhere. We all got to start somewhere. So if you got to have income off of it, plant it into a crop that's the least expensive to get in and out, and leaves you room for a cover crop. So plant some wheat. Get that wheat off early, and maybe put some red clover, some berseem clover, some crimson, 3 different types of nitrogen. That's one thing I did in my life too, is when a farmer come in and said, I need 100 units of N, I'd say, okay, well, let's use some ammonium sulfate, let's use a little liquid nitrogen, let's either use some urea or ammonium nitrate, so that I had, I actually treated that soil like it was livestock. I didn't feed it a full hay ration or a corn ration. I put a different, variety of N on there, and that's what I do with cover crops too. So, I hope that answers your question. That's a tough one. One thing you want to do is you want to insure it to the max. The programs are designed for us too, and that's I guess all you can really say on something like that. And you can grow corn successfully. You'll need to get some nitrogen sort. You've got to get some litter, some feather meal, some calcium nitrate, and get your pounds up there where, you need to do a budget. If you need to do a budget, type me an email and I can give you a hand online. I've got budget forms, and we could work through one and talk.
All right, great. Good answer to a tough question. Are there any good alternatives versus plowing your cover crop from a tillage standpoint? So maybe concerned about the moldboard plowing.
Oh, sure. Yeah, moldboard plowing. You see, that cornfield was the steepest area we got in our farm. So we're all pretty level, We got 100 acres of flat, and 100 acres of a little bit of roll, and 100 acres of, about the same but different soil type. But I showed you pictures of every farm, and our texture's all the same. So, I'm not afraid of that moldboard plowing because, I've got so many earthworms in my soil when it rains, that water comes in. I had some pictures of that. I figured I had about 20,000 earthworms on my driveway. You couldn't step without stepping on an earthworm. And I live right next to my fields, right in the middle of a farm. I've got a driveway that goes in a little ways. And that's my daughter, and she lives right next door to me, so we struggle with earthworms because, we got new homes, and we seal up the garage doors, and there's hundreds of them get in when it rains. So, but anyway, I know that moldboard plow is maybe not the best thing, but see, I don't plow till spring, and our ground, always was a little tough to plow in the spring, but once I got organic and started putting cover crop, I didn't have to deal with that. But you can double disc, you can chisel plow, just find the right tool. You can use a rotavator. They incorporate.
Have you seen these high-speed discs? Have they worked?
Question was about high-speed discs.
Sure, that might be an alternative and fit into this conversation. So, yeah, I really like those. I think they're okay. I never like to throw that dirt because that thing moves some soil quickly. I don't know if that's good or bad yet. And nobody knows. Most of the time, those situations take time to develop a symptom if there's a problem with it. You know, so I'm not making an opinion. You know, if they weren't that expensive, I'd have one. I would, just to have one. You know, and but you know, we're not big guys on. We buy what we need. You know, I don't buy what I want. If I bought what I want, I couldn't afford to farm because you'd go crazy. You know, so when I had like 8 plows that I bought in 88, 89 when the no-till come and the 30-inch rows. Man, I went to sales and bought 9 moldboard plows like new. Put them in a shed, and down to the last 2. When they're gone, I'm going to make a move. There you go. So when I get my money back at the scrapyard, then I'm going to go buy something. So I've been pretty blessed to be smart enough to see a lot of those things. I wasn't letting those plows that had 100 acres or less on them sit there and sell at a sale for $125 or $75. Or I'm running a nice 618 beautiful plow. It's 25 years old. I have $120 for it. You know, how can I afford not to get the most out of a piece of equipment? I think that's what we're meant to do. I don't know. And I can say that, you know, there's not one field. You're looking at the farm. This is about the sweep of the farm. It's pretty nice. I'm not afraid to mow board plow. I took all my contours out and put 10-acre straight strips across an 80. FSA had to learn to like that, but I didn't care. I just quit the program. I did. They had a little challenging. It was a real short discussion.
Learn to like that.
Yeah, they had to learn to like that. I love them. You know, most of those guys I went to school with up there, so I farmed a couple years like that. Pretty soon they come down and say, "What's going on here? Where'd them contours
If
go?"
you have pollinators,
Yeah.
you can probably get paid for that today.
I know.
NRC.
But anyway, I just, that's what I wanted to do. And I knew that would make me a lot more money than missing all those weeds and those contours. Because the first year I farmed that, I said, gone. I said, we're seeding it all down next year. We're going to plow out our pieces and we'll be set.
Okay, we got some practical questions we can probably run through pretty quickly.
Sure.
One is, what is the best row crop cultivator point for keeping the soil level, so not hilling when cultivating beans?
You know, those no-till cultivators work good. You know, actually, we got a pretty good guy here in the audience, Mark. I know Mark. What do you use, Mark? Just to give us another opinion and another view. You know, I'm stuck
we
on it.
have that problem, and it's a problem for continuing Aaron's work because we're in 15-inch rows, and we get a 5-inch ridge, and we can't knock it down with our sulfured RTS when we plant our cover crop. So it's actually a challenge. So we're looking at how do we stay flatter, and do we use our Tine weeder much more and park the cultivator and use the rotary hoe much more. So that's becoming an issue for us when we want to crimp Syria rye and get a good crimp.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
The comment was that this farmer, Mark Dudla, also has that problem. 15-inch rows, he has 5-inch ridges on there, and so the question is whether he parks the cultivator and uses tine weeder more. So he's also looking for an answer to that question. Something we can all work on together.
Sure. One thing, you know, a lot of times there's field days, you know, and just keep an eye out for what's going on. And they may have a cultivation field day where they offer 3 or 4 different cultivators. I'm not sure what region you're in, but you know, send me an email with the cultivator question, and I'll try to find you some more information, and we'll go from there.
Yep. So here's a question from, I think, a beginning farmer that's just looking for one piece of equipment that can maybe be as multifunctional as possible. So what is the best row crop cultivator? S-Tine, C-Shank, and what brand, type, low residue, minimum till, no till for beginning farmer? We're getting some chuckles.
Yeah.
I'm curious what the answer is going to be.
Anders breaking up some toothpicks so we can draw straws, I guess. I don't know what to tell you. You know, if I like what I got because I can manage its depth, and then if I need more dirt, just like I did this year, and I could tip that bar up and shove that dirt up underneath my shield, and it was hard. Those shield bolts were popping and wrenching, but I was working that soil up underneath there, you know. But a lot of times my pass, you know, if I don't, you know, as a rule, I don't have a lot of weeds, you know, so I only run that front coulter about 2 inches deep. I run my rear coulter just under the ground, and I'm in pretty loose dirt for all the rain we had. I was pretty satisfied with the action I had. It takes a little horsepower to run that. You need at least a 115, 20 horse tractor, and at least 3 category on that 3-point. You got to be tough enough to manage it. And I don't have any weights on any of my tractors because I don't want a bigger piece than that back there. So, it's a tough one. When I first started, I used a front mount, with little shovels on. Actually, I used those scrapers, and then I had big sweeps. I only had like 2 sweeps between the rows, even though I was on 38-inch rows. I'm still on 38, so I need some, I need enough lap not to miss, especially, with the ragweed that, Aaron asked about, because them one little hair on a 12-inch plant, they'll regenerate, So, that's a tough one. You need to look at what your soil is. If it's a heavy clay, I don't care what you do, you're going to have a little more lumpiness. Once you get working it into a better system and you build some organic matter and get time behind you, things will change there. So, no matter what you buy, you may want to trade it again anyway. And cultivators are still pretty inexpensive. I can go out there and guys are buying cultivators. I just came from Indiana at a show, and I had a call last night. The guy said he just bought a really nice 8-row Glencoe cultivator for $800. He says, looks like new. So I guess if you got to invest that kind of money, those Glencoes are pretty nice. They got one sweep. That's basically the big sweep, and then they got a couple sweeps behind it. They got a lot of shields on them, I guess if I was maybe going to do one cultivator to do all, I would maybe get something like that. So you got protection early, to fill in. You got those wheeled sweeps. So that's my answer to that.
So sometimes the best tool is the one that you have or the one you have easiest access to, and then perfecting that tool as much as possible.
Definitely.
Before you might have to change up.
All those guys, never seen configurations like that before that we went after those weeds with, and it's all about visualizing how much soil. It's theoretical, okay, we got 10 inches of weeds, we got to bring 10 inches of dirt over that, or we'll pinch, and then we'll never get it buried. So I guess I've always got the solution. I was always lucky enough to find the right piece to get a solution, even if I had to go driving down the road to buy it before there was internet back in the 90s. Believe me, every year I was looking for something different because, I had different weed situation, and I finally found that no-till unit I got, and I can adjust it any way I want, where, if you got a Danish Tine cultivator, good luck. You get what you get, so I had one of those to start with. Yeah, it was $100, I was jumping for joy. Yeah, till after the third time I realized I was in trouble and I had to go get something bigger, and, so that's what I do. I help guys get that figured out. So,
all right.
That's all I can tell you there.
Yep, I think that's good enough. We have a couple more questions. Do we have more questions in class? Do you have one, Tom?
Just a couple on the dairy hay. So you like straight alfalfa, and the follow-up questions are wet wrapped rounds or squares, and what is a premium for let's say a dairy quality alfalfa hay as opposed to conventional?
Question was about pure hay versus or hay versus pure alfalfa, and then what kind of bale
And price premium.
and price premium for different kinds of bales.
Sure. So, we grow 20 pounds of pure alfalfa because by the time we put the grass in a tight rotation, the grass is only there for 3 cuttings and it's gone. So organic grass seed is $4 a pound. I pulled that. I guess most dairy farmers, when they're going to go buy some hay, they're not going to buy low-end hay. They're going to buy high-end hay because, if you're going to haul low-end hay, look how much it costs you per point. And anyone that's in the hay market as a business sells it by the RFQ or RFV. So if you get up in that, we get a lot of 180. We get a lot of 180 hay, 190, because we are cutting 21st of May through depends on how tall it is. We go out and look at it. We don't just say, 21st is the day. You don't know what the spring brings, but we always want to make sure that our 2-year-old hay is off by August 1st so I can get 4 feet of cover crop so I can make it. I got to have an impact on my soil if I'm going to plant a cover crop. I'm not going through that, oh yeah, I buried a cover crop like this, or I got one in the way this tall in the spring and it's going to kill me and cost me 25 bushel yield on corn because it's trouble. I'm just not going there again. I did that twice in my life.
Are wet wrap bales okay?
Here's my take. See, I just mentioned to you I cut my hay for my buyers. Go put an ad in. Find that closest dairy farmer that buys hay and work with him. Just what I told Dale. Yeah, didn't I? Did it work?
It worked.
All right.
He wants some grass in it, though.
It's all right. Tell them, hey, you're going to get grass for a year.
Okay.
Let's see, and they've got different strains of grasses out now. A seed catalog used to be about this thick. Now they're this thick, and there's maybe some annuals you could put in there that might carry through, or there might be some biennials. I don't know. I'd have to look. There's new things out there. Yes?
An organic price premium for, say, dairy quality hay, 180, 200 RFQ?
Oh, we're at Organic Valley. They price. So just dial 888-444-MILK and ask for someone at the feed department. You want to talk about alfalfa. Those guys give prices. I don't follow those prices every day. I know what I get. I get about $2.40 a ton, whether it's a good year or a bad year, or the hay is here or the hay is there. I got 2 trailers and 2 skid steers. I pick that up and I take that hay and deliver it right underneath roof for them. And they want X amount of bales on this farm and X amount over on this farm, and I put it away for them. And if one year I'm a little high, they don't mind, because the next year maybe I'll be a little low. I've kept a constant price at $70 a bale, which is pretty reasonable, but we only make a 6'6" bale because a lot of those guys put them on little carts, so. And they'd run it in front of a stanchion barn, or their kids haul them to the calves or whatever. So, I've been pretty, a relationship is worth more than the dollar sign to me. Those guys, they're my customer on all fronts.
And that was an answer to a question about an organic premium for high RFQ hay. And so what number would they call if they want to get more information about price from OB?
888-444-MILK will take you to the answering service at Crop, and they can forward you to the feed department and just
Great.
tell them what you want.
Great.
And while you're there, give them your contact information. They can send you, give them an address, email address. They'll send you to an invitation to all the crop-sponsored local events, all kinds of information seminars, chances for free coupons, just things like that.
Okay.
Just great company to be associated with.
True enough. One question that you can run down really quickly. This is just asking for a reiteration of the pounds and varieties of your cover crop.
Okay, so I'm right now, the last several years, I've used 8 pounds of tillage radish, between 8 and 9, and it depends how the bags are. If I got 65 acres, that's going to get to corn next year, because I got 25 acres of beans, or maybe I don't have any. Maybe I put 90 acres in, and I always divide it to the bag so that when I'm done, all my bags are empty, because that little bit left laying around, I found that a lot of times it gets run over. Or I got good cement inside, palletized, heated storage for my things. I'm blessed. But most people don't. So when I go there the next year, I see that laying over in the corner and it's gone. So I use up. We're good at that. I'd just soon open her up a little bit and buy another bag as to chintz on cover crop seed. So I use 8 pounds of tillage radish. I use 15 pounds of sorghum sudan. I use 25 to 30 pounds of oats, just depends how it goes. A lot of times I go the higher side. We shoot for 27, so I say 25, 20, 30. I use about 20 pounds of Austrian pea, which is a tenth of the rate. I always put down about 20 pounds of soybeans. There's my nitrogen. I'm putting different forms of nitrogen down with that.
You got buckwheat?
And I got about 5 pounds of buckwheat. I don't go overboard on buckwheat, but buckwheat's a good weeder for ragweed. So is Sudan grass. That Sudan grass does a number on ragweed. And a couple pounds of vetch, just vetch seed. And I got started with that because I bought some oats from a guy that had a little bit of vetch seed in it. You could see a few vetch seeds in it. So I put it down. I really liked it. I thought it was cute stuff. So I just been buying one bag and putting it out there, so it's a pound. Oh, is that
It's a
right?
lifetime investment.
I never.
Depending
Yeah,
on
you
what
had
you
vetch.
have.
I was at your field
We're
day.
not getting rid of it.
Is that right? Well, see, my plow has helped me. See, my plow has done that for me. It's cleaned up all my cover crop seed where I've never had one seed come back. I remember planting buckwheat in 1992, and somebody said, "Oh, you're in trouble now."
That's usually trouble.
I don't know. I've never seen that in that field since.
Sure.
I've been there. That was the first farm I owned. That was 80. That's why I went to the Acres Convention. I bought that farm. I said, well, if it's mine, I'm not going to put chemicals on it. I'm going to go find out how to do it organically. So, there's my prescription, and there's cover crop books and a lot of information. You're more than welcome. That's my phone. Isn't that terrible? The speaker left his phone. I go ahead and get it. So there's my answer to that. No, it don't make no. Yeah, just push it off.
I think we have one more question, and then we can let Daryl go, and that is about precision agriculture. Do you recommend going with precision GPS RTK if that's an option? How much easier is it for the operator?
Well, I don't have, RTK. I would love to have it just so that I had some knowledge and information on it. And, my son wants it too, so I think, once your son wants it, it'll eventually come. But I've rode with some guys that have it, and actually I got a lot of guys that have it. But I've never specifically done it. I think it'd be the best move you could make if you got the acres. What that number is, for how many acres it takes to do that. See where I'm only planting a few row crops, that's why I didn't get real excited and get into those kind of things. I'm just running, I only plow and plant 125 acres of row crops. Granted, I get super good yield, so I'm happy with them, but that's, we have a business too, so it's, the farming was to get my son involved and have him do something, but that's when we had older tractors. Now we got really nice newer equipment and more of them, so we can do both.
Mark, I'm curious what your take would be on that.
Yeah, here we
Having
got
gone
two
through that
guys
transition.
On
here.
RTK,
Yeah,
on dead level fields, it can't be beat. If you have any side slopes, you really need implement guidance.
Okay.
Because a lot of times we're playing the piano while we're cultivating with our nudge. Because as that planter is drafting downhill, we got to draft downhill with the cultivator too.
Right.
Even though the tractor was right where it should have been.
Yep.
So it's not quite there in the hills, but it's definitely very good where it's level.
All right. The comment was RTK is cannot be beat on dead level ground. A very worthwhile investment. A little bit challenging on hillsides where you'd really need row guidance. Implement guidance to make that
Sure.
to make that work.
like that cultivator I showed you with the wire and the box that runs the cylinders that nudge in and out. Sure. Yeah, I could see that.
But no more guess rows when you plow. I mean, you can
Right.
lay out your dead rows.
Right.
Everything's parallel.
Sure.
I mean,
You plowing some, Mark?
all our corn ground.
Oh, at sea. I just wouldn't even struggle. And I watch so many people have so many weeds that, I don't know, I plowed my whole life, so I didn't have many weeds. A guy gave me his plow. Gave me a 4-bottom Oliver. Whitey Wigman. Terrible farmer, but he gave me that plow, so I loved it.
And this is a question maybe for you, Mark. The number of acres to justify GPS RTK. You have over 1,000?
Yeah.
Just over 1,000?
Yeah, and we have 2 units that we share.
Okay.
But the cost has come down a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you jumped in earlier, it was $35,000 a unit. Now we're 15, 20.
Right.
So it's come down a lot, and the accuracy has come way up.
Yeah. So if you had 500 acres,
Yeah, I would
maybe
think
worth it.
500-600 acres of organic, definitely.
Yeah. 500 to 600 acres of organic might be worth it.
You
And
bet.
the comment was that the cost has come down quite a bit to 15 20,000 per
Yeah.
unit.
Yeah, and I mean, we're doing so much more multitasking. I mean, I hit it at the end of the row. We're rotary hoeing to the other end of the field. I'm on my cell phone the whole time. We're running at night now with lights and stuff, you know. And if we hadn't had all that guidance, we wouldn't be out there as long. So we're getting more use out of our tractors and equipment.
Do you variable rate anything with your GPS?
Yeah, seed. And,
Seed.
Seed's the biggest thing.
Yep.
We'll run between probably 32,000 and 40,000
Okay.
variable rate seeding of corn.
Okay.
And we also do some nutrient-wise too, but there's more questions than answers of what we should be doing variable rates right now in the organic arena
Yeah.
that we've kind of backed off.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Great. All right. I think that came through. All right. So it is after 4. Thank you, Daryl, for
bet.
that
Honors.
marathon session.
You
Really
bet.
appreciate it. Thanks everyone for tuning in. One announcement before we take off, and I'll send an email about this soon. But there is, as part of this grant that is funding this seminar, there's a farmer-to-farmer mentorship program that Moses has, and so they basically team up someone who has experience, who is a mentor, with someone that is a beginning farmer that is a mentee, and as part of this program, you have 2 years of free admittance into the Moses Conference, which is an expensive conference and an extremely valuable conference. That is a great investment to make, and it's more structure around some of that education. So if you are a beginning farmer and you'd like a mentor, email me and we can try to match you up with someone. And being in the upper Midwest would help a lot, as the conference is in La Crosse. But so email me if you'd like more information about that. And tomorrow, we have more great talks. We have Mark Dudla, who we have already heard from a lot in many of our sessions, will actually be in front of the microphone this time, talking about his farm, some agronomics of his farm, and possibly some economics. And we will also have Dr. Aaron Silva from UW here, who I work with, talking about reduced tillage, cover crop-based soybean production. So 2 great talks smashed together into a short time frame. So make sure to tune in, and we will see you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your days.